And we're back with another episode in the Daily Vedantic, talking that Geet. We're in the midst of our 20-part series on the Bhagavad Gita. And right at the top of the episode, just want to say that Swami Parthasarathi, my teacher, extols our primary service in our community as spreading cheer and joy everywhere we go. So, and ever since hearing that years ago, I have loved cultivating that as a service within my community, and I hope it's imparted in these episodes. It's certainly something that I've cultivated within myself over the years. Far cry from where I was 10 years ago. But all of that aside, because we're talking the 10 under-discussed themes within the Gita. We cover the 10 most discussed and I'd say the fundamental concepts and themes within the Bhagavad Gita, the most famous poem in the world. But something that I wanted to do, and I've wanted to do this for a while, is discuss the themes that are often overlooked when diving into the Gita. And these are solely my opinion, but I think they are equally as significant as the first 10 that we covered. And I highly recommend you checking out episode 1 if you haven't already within this series and starting there. But if you have, or if you're coming across this video or podcast episode blindly, well, it's got something in store for you, because today's episode is on the role of the individual in society. So in episode 1, we talked about dharma and duty. Dharma can be translated as duty, law, nature. It can be translated in so many different ways in English. You could cover 2 pages in translating that Sanskrit word into English. So context is always necessary to understand which use of that word is being evoked in the midst of a verse or a higher ideal that's being discussed. But duty is one of the main themes within the Gita. Certainly, that's why we started with that. And your duty, swadharma, your nature, is another major theme within the Gita that is often discussed. And thirdly, within the context of the Gita, a major theme when it comes to the individual is who that individual truly is, who you truly are. But just beneath these, when it comes to the individual, there are a handful of verses around the role of the individual within society. Not just their duty, not just their nature, not just who they truly are, and within the realms of obligations and identification, Vedanta has a lot to say. Within obligation, our work that we do, and it could be parenting one minute, it could be helping out a neighbor the next, or it could be your job and your approach to mastering a craft or a skill. But one thing that is explicitly clear within all of these is that work without attachment is worship. This phrase is from Swami Parthasarathi, my teacher, and it is so beautiful. So beautiful that I shared it with a friend, Stephen Pressfield. He's the author of an amazing book, The War of Art, and that is a classic, cult classic book for creatives around the world. He lives here in LA, and I shared with him this quote that work without attachment is worship. Shared with him my teacher's quote, and he mentioned it on the Daily Stoics podcast, where he also talked about Vedanta. So the Daily Vedantic and Daily Stoic have a nice little interplay within that episode. But when it comes to our obligations, when it comes to our work, it is not just a necessity or a chore or a checkbox throughout the day. When it comes to our work, that service, that karma, you could call it all of these things, but I love that this phrase articulates it as worship. And it is only worship if it is work without attachment. Some people, like Ram Dass, distill the entire Gita down to two things. You are not the actor, and the fruits of your actions are not yours. It's a beautiful distillation into two major themes. It's not exactly how Swami Parthasarathi or the lineage that I study in would articulate it, but that is a beautiful, beautiful distillation into two of the major themes of the Gita. You are not the actor, which gets into who you are, and the fruit of your actions are not yours. So much of the work that we do is around attachment. So many of our obligations we think is just fundamental. We need to do them so that we can get on to the important, especially if you are attracted to spiritual concepts, get on to the more important, fascinating, entertaining philosophical concepts or philosophical parts of life. But the Gita is so clear. Our obligations are not just where our work just needs to get done, is orthogonal to our philosophical or spiritual work. Our obligations show us where our work lies. It said that karma action is like a fire that purifies us. It heats us up and shows us where our spiritual work, our philosophical work, still lies. And when it comes to obligations or the role of the individual in society, there is such a high contrast from the Vedantic lens to the Roman Catholic lens that I grew up with, or the conventional Christian lens here in the West, where our role is whatever society asks of us is for the here and now, and we're biding our time until Judgment Day, doing a handful of good works along the way, but maybe 10% good works, 90% worldly works as we chill in this big blue waiting room. In the Vedantic lens, within the Gita, everything we do can be done Vedantically, can be done in service towards a higher ideal. There is a Vedantic way to brush your teeth. Not in an explicit, dogmatic way, but taking care of your teeth. That can be of service to your community. I started flossing when I started to study this philosophy because it has such an emphasis on everything you do it for the higher ideal. And before, I would just crush through a minute of brushing my teeth, no flossing, because I thought, there was so much world to go and get. So much to do, to accumulate, to gather. And it's so hilarious, somewhat preposterous to think that there is a philosophical way to take care of your teeth. But when you recognize that how you take care of yourself will either provide you a whole host of distractions in a philosophical or higher pursuit, or it can be conducive to service. I know working out makes you a much, much better, much more capable community member, especially as a father with 3 little kids we're picking up all the time. Or being able to sit without distraction to knock out 4 hours of deep work. Which brings me to that second part, the identification within our society. Within Vedanta, we're called to have an ever-expanding ring of identification. Identification with your family, identification with your community, identification with your state, with your country, with all human beings, then all living beings. And the unity with all living beings is a clear theme within the Gita. And when this ring of identification expands, your ring of obligation expands as well. And you might find yourself spending a few more minutes in the gym, spending a little bit longer in that task that you could have knocked out and done the cheap and easy way to do it right. You might even find yourself spending an extra minute or two flossing your teeth when you never did it before, but you do it now because It's all part of your obligation. And it's all part of this work without attachment that ends up becoming worship. This rounds out the role of the individual in society within the themes of the Gita, from dharma and duty to swadharma, your nature, to karma and action and service, to who you are, but also in the pragmatic sense, who you identify with. And that's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic, on the role of the individual in society. Thanks for listening to the Daily Vedantic. This reflection is part of a free repeating 2-year course in Advaita Vedanta. Rooted in the timeless wisdom of the Upanishads, arguably the oldest philosophical texts on earth, you can begin with episode 1, which gives the 15-minute overview of the whole philosophy of Vedanta, or you can join the journey with any episode at any point. But the critical aspect of this course, of understanding and mastering anything, is to study and reflect, even for 10 to 15 minutes on the timeless each day, preferably at the start of your day. As is said in this philosophy, reflection is 100,000 times as powerful as listening. So listen, journal, sit with, discuss these concepts, or ask questions at thedailyvedantic.com with our AI-powered chatbot, informed by about 700 episodes here, as regularly as one can, if you want to see clarity and peace almost effortlessly unfold in your daily life. And if it doesn't result in a near immediate increase in clarity and peace, then toss aside and feel free to never listen again. One of the things that you might notice is after 7 or 8 days in a row, this doesn't feel like a discipline. This feels like a visit with a best friend, to dive into the timeless with daily reflection. Within a few days, it becomes one of your favorite parts of the day. You can also find out more, including news about in-person events in Los Angeles and beyond, at the Daily Vedantic on Instagram, or through our weekly newsletter at thedailyvedantic.com. Additionally, check out the links in our show notes for more resources like the books that are mentioned most frequently in the episodes, including Vedanta Treatise, perhaps the simplest and most straightforward read on this philosophy I've ever come across. Until next time, and from the entire team that works on the Daily Vedantic project, thanks for listening.